Welcome back, everybody. We're here with Audra Reinhardt, our new South Office Manager. So welcome back, Audra. Not new anymore, now you're a veteran.
Yeah, 2 whole weeks.
One of the cool things about this segment is that you guys just finished your rural course with Rika, and anytime we do classes, it's all theoretical. But Audra, you have been, you own a farm, work on a farm, or have.
Well, my husband owns a farm.
Yeah.
I just get to stay there.
There you go. But you've been around that life for a
Yes.
long time, and you worked with rural clients for quite a while.
Yes.
Which means that this is where sort of theory meets practice. So thank you for coming on, and we're going to be talking about some tips, some things that you need to worry about, what stuff to advise on and get the experts to look at, and all things in between that. So kick us off.
I'm going to start with something that's not on this piece of paper, just quickly.
Oh,
but
you
it's
do
easy.
this to
it's
me.
easy. I know I do, but it's so easy. It's so easy. If somebody has their very first client who calls and says, I'd like to sell an acreage, or I have a farm or a piece of land or something, as an office manager, what is your first piece of advice?
That's a good question.
Is it you should go for it, run wild and free, good luck, or should you partner with someone, or should you refer it? How do you typically approach
You
that?
just answered your question.
Oh,
Yes, definitely. So if an agent were to call me and say, I've got someone who wants to buy,
yeah.
particularly, I think my first hesitation would be if someone wants to buy. Yes, please find someone who's well-versed in the rural industry, the rural practice, and get some help, get some advice, maybe even take them along with you, share the commission, like just do it, because that first transaction you do in the rural area, there's so much to learn, and you really put yourself at risk and your clients at risk if you don't know what you're doing. And there's a lot to it. It's not the same as selling a house in the city.
Right.
And people think that, oh, I'm giving away half my commission, so that's not great. I know this is going to cost me like $5,000, whatever it is. You're going to gain a lifetime of knowledge.
Pretend it's very inexpensive.
Yeah.
It's a very inexpensive course.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and you're probably never going to get a referral or repeat business off of a deal you botch either, right?
Or you'll be sued and
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
So,
cool.
so obviously water, when you look at an acreage in terms of things to look at, is where we got to start with everything. Talk to us about what you got to look for and what specifically the water tests catch, and what do we have to be concerned with?
Yeah. So, you know, when I was running all of this past my husband last night, he said, you know, what you need to say is most realtors and buyers or sellers would assume that people would understand that water and sewer and all that that it's just available to you. Well, if you've always worked in the city, yes, it's just available to you. But on an acreage or a farm, those things are the responsibility of the homeowner, of the landowner. So it's not just there for you. It's not, and I can't tell you how many times I went to sell an acreage and the buyer was like, oh, so I have to look after the well? I have to, yeah, the city or the nearby town doesn't supply this to you for the most part. So yes, the well is one of the first things that you would need information on. And you can get a copy of the well report from the Alberta Environment website. So if you go to Alberta Environment, search for, I can't remember exactly what it is. For those of you who need the information, text me, phone me, email me, I'll give you the link.
Well reports section.
Yeah, it's the well report section. And you just plunk in the legal description and you can get that well. So that is when the well was first drilled. That's the well report.
Right.
Okay. There are other well reports that have been done possibly more recently, but ask the listing realtor for that. Or if you're listing the property, ask the seller for that. Lots of times that will be available to you. If it isn't available, then get it tested, because that is very important information if you're listing. So you just call a local drilling company and get the seller to have that available for them for your listing.
I actually think that we have, I'm going to look behind the scene, which is weird, but Jen, do we have a Best My Nest vendor who does?
Titans, yes, we do. He does all the well stuff.
There we go. Sorry to ask behind the scenes, but we have a Best My Nest vendor who will come
Good.
out and do that. So if you want somebody just right off the top of your head, you can
And you
go
said
there.
the company name is Titans?
Titans.
Titans.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Home services section.
how old, when you pull the well report offline or online, off the line
Yes.
through the website. At what point should you say, I'm going to get this thing tested anyways because it's too old?
Yeah.
What is kind of that tipping point or your gut?
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know that I have an answer, a definitive answer for that one.
Okay.
You know, an older one, let's say 10 years or older, I'd be questioning it. And question your seller or the listing agent as well. Because if there's, you know, and particularly in areas where there's oil or gas exploration and the surveying that's done, those things can change. So yes, those wells should be retested.
Awesome.
So could you almost just ask a generic question like how many people are in your family and like how many of you can shower in the morning and does the water come out okay? Like just from like a general, I guess it's just reference points, right?
Yeah, it's a reference point, I guess, but there are ways to change that type of thing. So one of the things that I was going to mention was you want to check the gallons per minute that's listed on the listing.
Absolutely.
And there's a minimum that I recommend as someone who lives in the area or in farming or rural area. So you want that minimum if you're going to have 1 or 2 horses, if you've got 6 people in the house, if you've got 14 people in the house, yes, there's a minimum. But that being said, you can put cisterns in a house that has, so that you've got a
reservoir.
Yeah. So it's not easy. This information,
Right.
There's so many variables and so many other things that you should know. So please don't think you can just jump in and just do it. There's a lot of information you need.
So talk a little bit about septic and sewer.
So that again, there are different kinds of septic ways to deal with sewer. So there's septic and tank, there's holding tanks, and that not particularly, along with wells, Alberta Environment is very involved in it now. It used to be that rural people could just stick something in the ground and dig a hole and run a hose or whatever, but Alberta Environment is very, very sticky on installations and maintaining. So there again, there's a knowledge that you need for that type of work.
What about utilities and services? So electricity, things like that. What are people looking for primarily there?
So I would say that electricity, that's basic. You know, that's
probably
most
one.
Properties would have that.
Yeah.
If an acreage is a bare land acreage, lots of times you'll find that the services are brought to the property line, and then someone who's going to buy a bare land acreage needs to pay to have those services brought into wherever they're going to build the structure.
Right.
And that can be costly. So those are things that you want your buyer to realize, that get a quote on that. That should be part of their due diligence, what that cost is going to be. In terms of already existing rural properties, you want to also check into, electricity is almost a given, but whether there's gas to the property or whether it's only available for propane, if there's a propane tank, that will affect the value of a property if it's only propane. Most people want to see natural gas to the property. They don't want to be paying for a delivery truck once a month to be bringing in the propane, or heaven forbid, running out of propane in the middle of February.
Yeah.
So those are things you want to take into consideration.
In terms of getting answers to all of those questions, is that on the buyer's realtor, or is the seller typically have all of that documentation and then the buyer's realtor just has to ask for it?
You know what? I think that's a case-by-case listing sort of situation. Some listing realtors, there are minimums that you have to have on the listing in all the fields. But I think as a buyer's agent, the more questions you ask, the better you'll be representing your client.
Well, and that speaks to, we talked about representing a buyer, going out and buying an acreage, but if you're representing a seller and you've never done it before, we talked about, getting sued and stuff, but that understanding of opinion of value, it's, is this one that does have propane and the septic has to be pumped out or whatever else, how much value is there? What type of water systems do affect different value? Which ones are more valuable? And the realtors that have been around and done that for a while know that inherently, but someone brand new to the game might advise their client saying, yeah, that price looks great, but everybody else, it's been on the market for a year because nobody else has looked at it because it's got propane and it's just too tough to do the different things to it.
And if you don't know the questions to ask, then the sellers can't even disclose the answers.
True. I think my blessing on this, in terms of representing clients, was that I've been living in the rural setting for 25 years plus.
Yeah.
So I knew the things that could go wrong, like the pump could go on my well, and you've got 3 little kids or 4 little kids, and all of a sudden you don't have any water. Like these are real life situations that can happen, and your buyer particularly your buyer, if they've never lived in the country, they need to know what those situations might be and how to address them.
Right.
So having a contact like Titan right off the start, if you're the agent, you've just added a ton of value to your client right there.
Right.
Nice. What about accessing the property, easements, things like that are on title?
Yeah, that's another really interesting one. You'll find that sometimes acreages will have shared access. So with the neighbor, or there's an easement on the property that allows a property owner to access their property from the neighbor's road. Those can be interesting situations because right now the 2 owners get along.
Yeah.
But let's say the existing owner and the new owner, the new buyer, doesn't get along with. They can just all of a sudden say, yeah, no, I'm sorry, you can't access your property. So
and imagine winter repairs and maintenance, things like that. It's who's going to maintain the quality of that road.
If it's a private access, the county plows will not come up your road. So be prepared. Have a plow on the front of your Audi if you want to get out of the,
Rethinking our farm. Rethinking the farm. Zoning. Talk about zoning in terms of agricultural, residential, commercial, and the whole scheme of things.
Yeah, some of the MDs are they're coming into the new century with changing their zoning and not grandfathering an acreage with agriculture zoning, and it'll be country residential zoning. So you can get a benefit if you can find an acreage that has agriculture zoning, and sometimes then there aren't the limitations that a regular acreage would have that's zoned as country residential. So yeah, those zoning questions or fields are a really great thing to pay attention to as well.
So this also isn't a house where it's just a residential lot. There's acres involved, and people are actually lending money on land and stuff. So how do you get financing for these things? Is it your traditional bank? You just walk down to,
No.
And what do you do? How does this work?
Yeah, you need to, so if you've got a buyer, you need to make sure that your buyer is straight up with their broker or their lender saying, we're looking at an acreage. Maybe take in one that maybe taken a listing to the lender that, not one that they're ready to put an offer on necessarily, but one that they can ask the questions of their lender. Different banks will give different lending, what's the word? Criteria and thresholds in terms of down payments and that kind of thing on different numbers of acres. So like one lender will lend 80% on 4 acres, whereas another lender will do 10 acres.
Right.
So it makes a big difference in terms of the cash layout that a buyer has to have up front. It also can, that can limit the amount of people for a market for a listing that you might have as well. So you have to pay attention to that.
We should not let realtors do this on their own if they have never done it before. There should almost be like a mandatory, if this is your first one, like you're partnering with someone.
Well, and this is where RECA is coming up with specialized licensing for these types of things.
This is crazy.
There's a lot to know.
Right?
And
There's
also,
a lot to know.
It speaks to the value of having a mortgage specialist and representative who understands this, just like the realtor, because they can be talking and, oh yeah, you're totally good. And if they didn't ask the right questions about what type of water, things like that, because, a financing company is not going to want to lend on a property that doesn't have water.
Yeah.
So
that's another good point, actually. Most of the agents that I know that work in rural or country residential, they have lenders that they know or mortgage brokers that they know that work in this field, because it's not like it's the same thing.
Exactly.
You want a mortgage broker that is well-versed in the rural or country residential field.
Good pun. Well-versed.
Well-versed.
I try.
Kind of a good story. I'm sure people do this all the time, but I remember we had Jeremy, one of our Northwest office realtors. I'm always telling private stories about Jeremy, but anyways, he got a referral, and it was for piece of agricultural acreage land, and called and was just like, I can't do this. I have no idea. Is there someone that you can give this to? I was like, have you thought about asking somebody? And then I ended up calling Denise Staples, who works out of Cochrane, who's just amazing. And I said, he's never done this before. Would you consider co-listing? Absolutely, I'd love to help. By the end of it, Jeremy was like, she is the smartest person in the world. Like, I cannot believe how much information it takes to do this. Like, to watch him for him to watch her have those conversations, he was just like, I can't imagine had I not done this. And it was like taking a course, just being part of the process. And he felt very lucky to have been mentored through a deal like that with somebody.
Yeah.
So way to
and
do
some
it.
agents will afterwards go, yeah, I'm not going to do the real stuff anymore.
Yeah, it's exactly
Because it's a
what
lot.
I did. I would sell an acreage in Bears Paw or something like that, like 2 acres or something.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go outside, and I just refer everything else out because I did not have the knowledge and the understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on a little bit, what if there's a water property on it, which seems like it'd be so
Water
idyllic
feature?
and lovely, but if there was like a creek or a duck pond or like a pretty little meandering something for a little
A babbling brook.
canoe, yeah.
Yeah. There again, you want to
Idyllic buyer.
Yeah, I mean that would add value to the property depending on where it is and how close it is to the house and if there's any water seepage, if those sorts of questions.
Is it your creek?
No.
No.
It's not your creek.
No.
No.
Is it your duck pond?
It depends on if it's man-made or
What if it's not?
Well, so that brings up another issue is there a registration against the title and has Ducks Unlimited got a registration against the title? So I don't know if you know this, but Ducks Unlimited is trying to repopulate the duck population, and so they're making offers to farmers and acreage owners. If you will leave this duck area as it is and let it grow and you won't take any water from it ever again, they put a caveat against your property, but there again, that will, in my opinion, devalue a piece of farmland because the farmer can't change anything about that area because there's a caveat. So those sorts of things you need to be aware of. So it's
Interesting.
like a city property in that regard. Pay attention to what's registered
Right.
against the title.
Interesting.
All right. Moving on here. Boundaries. Are they
Yeah.
staked? How do you determine
Just make
them?
sure that you know exactly where the property lines are. Okay, so here's a confession. The very first, once I became a realtor, the very first place I sold, and he's a good friend of mine, so luckily he's a good friend of mine, we found out that the neighbor had built the barbed wire fence on this quarter section 6 inches in onto their property line. And so, no, sorry, it was the other way around. They built the original owner built the fence 6 inches onto the Hutterite colony's quarter section. And so when my friend bought that quarter section, the Hutterite colony came to him right away and said, okay, move the fence.
Really? For 6 inches?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was a big expense that he wasn't prepared for. And, that was a quarter section. We never imagined that the fence would have been built on. It does make me question why the Hutterite colony didn't ask the original owner to move the fence.
Yeah.
But still,
You just never
check
know.
the boundaries, make sure the fence is in the right. It's just like anything. An RPR, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, how are we doing with time?
We're running out. Let's
wanna kind
pick
of-
one here.
I would like to mention the
Yeah.
environmental.
Yeah,
Yes.
please do. Please
So
do.
that is a big one because Alberta Environment is becoming more involved with things like this. If you were to buy an acreage that has been subdivided out of a quarter section and it's an older farm site, there are implications there for environmental concerns. So if there was fuel tanks there, if there was chemicals or fertilizers stored there, so those are good questions to ask as well. That's
Absolutely.
a big deal.
Yeah. The government is, obviously save the environment is an important thing. We have to make sure that our planet lives on for everything else. And we were a little bit lackadaisical back in the day. It's like dumping stuff wherever we wanted to dump and things like that.
Yes.
And now we're realizing that, this is all coming into play. So you need to be a lot more concerned about environmental stewardship, become
Exactly.
stewards of the land. So lots of great information out there. And I got to tell you,
Thank you, Audra.
even that Green Acres manual that was at the end of the RECA course, there's an appendices that you can download in the PDF, the supplemental PDF, which I know you guys all looked at for reference. But there's a Green Acres. It has this Green Acreages, I believe it's called, or something. But they have this environmental land stewardship guide that's really, really good to introduce a new person to what it's like to live on an acreage and some of the considerations.
And it's a PDF?
Yeah.
You should put it in the buyers section of the article and template database.
I'm working on a bunch of that stuff. So yeah, it's...
Well, if it's not there by Friday, everyone email them.
But there's actually a complete binder and a guide, and I got a sample one in my office that's absolutely outstanding on all this types of information, and gets the people that think that it's just, I get to frolic in the fields, that there's more to it. So
interestingly, I think there's a statistic, and I should clarify this or confirm it, but someone told me that acreage people will buy an acreage, and on average, they're only on an acreage for 5 years because they realize how much work an acreage is.
Yeah, it's insane. Like 70% of new buyers just don't last on an acreage or something like that. Yeah. So, Audra, your brain is huge, and obviously you have the tons of experience on this. Oh, it's a good compliment.
Yeah. She's saying that because I'm about to ask her to teach a course on something.
Oh, no.
Right? You'd be so good.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing that with us. Yeah. And obviously, any other questions you guys have, obviously there's feel free to reach out to you.
Yes.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have the experience, please partner up with someone who does.
Resource.
We're going to come back. We're going to be back with a great video on creating accessible telephone experiences for your clients. And we will be back in a moment.
Thank you.